says it's live.
Oh, it is?
It says
Oh, and everybody disappeared. That's pretty awesome.
the Facebook page to make sure, because we had a few glitches last night.
I'm going to check right now, actually. Hello, attendees. We'll be with you in just a minute.
Beautiful, Susan. I love your hair, by the way, Susan.
This is my quarantine hair.
This is my
All right, ladies, you are live.
All right.
Awesome.
One
Now, how do I
second, Sharon. Are you sharing or am I? Where is Sharon?
How do I share it?
I know. Erin. My gosh. Erin's doing it.
Typical
I got it. I can do this. I'm doing it. Ooh, I am now Susan.
Doing a little day.
Found it on the beach
Thank
2 days ago.
Okay.
What?
It is live now, right?
Yep, you are live.
Awesome. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. My name is Mina Jane. I am the programming librarian at the Cary Memorial Library in Lexington, Massachusetts. I know we have people here from all over the world, so I need to say we're in Eastern Standard Time. Just a few structural things. As you can see, Kristen and Susan are here, ready to go. Hey. Somebody is.
Is it your Facebook page, Mina? Getting feedback? It's like a 10-second delay or something.
The echo.
Yeah. Is somebody not muted? Oh, that's me. All right. Can people still hear me in an echo?
It sometimes happens if you're looking at Facebook instead of doing it through Zoom.
Oh, you are so right.
Oh, we've made all the,
Susan.
we know.
Yeah.
Quite the techies we are.
Right. Because
Okay.
you
All
have
right.
to get to
Just
talk
to
to your
look at
friends.
Zoom, you won't get the echo.
Okay.
I'm feeling smug.
Let's get out of this. We're good.
So
Okay.
impressed.
I got it. I got it. Oh, can you send a note, Kristen, to all of your fans saying that we're having technical issues? I'm just kidding.
I had to do that last night. We were frozen
Okay.
in terror.
All right. We are ready to go.
All right.
Again, Jane, Cary Memorial Library, programming librarian. We are recording this session and we are streaming this live on Facebook, as you guys probably know. You can use the Q&A to ask questions. I'll be feeding questions to Kristen and Susan during the session. And you can use the chat for comments and technical issues, which I'll be paying attention to. Okay, officially, let's get started. I have a lot of people to thank for making this happen. One is our romance book club at the Lexington, the Cary Library. We're small, but we're mighty. So join us if you're in the area. We are virtual for the next few months, so you can get a flavor of all the fun books we read. We're going to be reading Jeannie Lynn books for July. We brought this to you in partnership with NECRA, New England chapter of RWA, and we were very pleased to do that. I was very thankful for William Morrow and Penguin Random House for helping us bring this together so well and so well organized. And I met some great people too. You can still buy signed and personalized books from Porter Square Books to the end of the day. And Kristen and Susan will send those book plates to the bookstore. And, you know, I always say this, signed books are gold. It's just the truth. I'd like to thank the Cary Library Foundation for supporting all of our programs in many, many ways. So now I'm going to start with some quick introductions. Susan Elizabeth Phillips, who actually needs no introduction, but I have to do this anyways, is an award-winning, beloved author of many, many wonderful books. I was introduced to her with the Chicago Stars and have read every single book by her. And I'm pretty sure everybody on this call probably has. Because once you read one, it's like candy, you can't stop. Oh, potato chips, you can't stop. And she says things in her books that make us remember them always. Like, I will never, ever forget the serial killer in Nobody's Baby But Mine. Never. And her new book, Dance Away With Me, came out today. It's wonderful. If you get it, please read it. Please tell everybody how awesome it is, because it really, really is. And it just got the Publisher's Weekly Book of the Week pick. And so that is amazing. Kristen Higgins is also an award-winning best-selling author. She co-hosts the Crappy Friends podcast, which is such a hoot for a name for me, because all of your friends, I want to be friends with them. Always the Last to Know is her 20th book. It was featured as People's Pick of the Week for this week, and that's a tremendous honor, but it's her second in a row. So yeah, take a bow, please take a bow. What I love about Kristen is that she writes these amazingly wonderful books, as does Susan. But Kristen's books, the proceeds go to St. Jude's Children's Hospital for the pre-orders and the first week of orders. So you can tell where her heart is. It's not just in writing, it's in being a wonderful person. And if you read the bios of both Kristen and Susan on their websites, you'll see that she's not alone. Both of them. So they, but read their books. They make you laugh, they make you cry, they make you want to be their best friend. I do have to say, because this is a book birthday, we are going to be drinking. So I have my drink ready to go. You guys ready? This is my first champagne bottle. Woo!
Cheers.
Okay. Cheers to a wonderful night of reading for all of you. Hope you don't have to work tomorrow.
But when this is over, this is going to become wine.
Yeah, same. Yeah. I'm drinking a glass of vodka. No, I'm not. It's just water.
I'm drinking the same thing.
Okay, so I'm going to start off with a question that I know you guys will talk about your books, we'll laugh a lot, but I wanted to start with this one. When you started writing, however many years ago, what was your goal? Was it this, to be, at sort of at the pinnacle of your career, or maybe not pinnacle, because I know you have many more great books in front of you, but to have millions of legions of fans and people that adore you, and to act like the Beatles when you show up, like me, I'm embarrassed to say. But not just that, not just the books, but you're also a mentor to upcoming authors, and you set an example for them. And so I wonder if that was part of your goal or your thoughts when you first started writing, if it evolved over time.
You go first, Susan, since you started writing when I was like in 8th grade.
She starts off already like that. And I happen to know that below that cute top, she's wearing pajama bottoms. So and by the way, I said I was going to wear my yoga top under here. I was, but when I unbuttoned the blouse to wear the yoga top, it looked like I was naked underneath.
I thought you were stunning.
Thank you. So yes, I set off to be a mentor and to be incredibly famous, which is a total lie. I started writing when I had a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old at home, started writing with a friend. And did I seriously think that book was going to be published? No, but we were having a good time and it kept our brains sharp. Never in a million years when I started writing did I imagine this. And it did not happen gradually. I have a feeling Kristen will say the same thing. It was something that unfolded bit by bit, and what a blessing this career has been. When the kids were younger, it let me have a good, stimulating career while I was home with my kids, and I just wish every woman would be that lucky. But it's also let me meet so many amazing people that I would not have met.
Yeah.
Otherwise.
Yeah. I also started writing when my kids were little. So it wasn't, I planned originally when I was a teenager, I wanted to be a pediatric surgeon. And I went to college, intending to be a pre-med major. And that fell apart very quickly when I realized how much math and science I would have to memorize. And so that career path's going very badly. But I started writing when my son was in nursery school, when he was 3, and he's 21 now. And I thought, if I can make as much writing a book as I would if I were bartending again, because I bartended in college, that would be great. You know, the tips and stuff. If I could, you know, make a couple extra thousand a year, that would be great. And it did start off small. You know, you get your first sale, and I think, Susan, did you sell your first manuscript?
Sold the first one in 3 weeks after the publisher received it.
Wow. Wow.
But I did not have the lofty goal of becoming a pediatric surgeon. I just wanted to move start.
It was the same. I needed something to keep my brain active while I was folding laundry and making
Right.
block towers and feeding the ducks. And I loved being a stay-at-home mom. So it did work out great. And
Were you a big reader from the very beginning?
yes, yes. I mean, reading got me through my childhood, my teen years. Every bump in the road, I turned to books. And in fact, when I was writing Fool's Rush In, which was my first completed manuscript, I remember saying, this has to be as good as a Susan Elizabeth Phillips book before I send it out, because you are the queen of romantic comedy. And I wanted it to be able to sit proudly next to yours. And so I wrote that book. It took me about a year and a half to revise it, you know, because I was very aware that I can't give out what I think is good. It has to be really polished and tight. So you were definitely an inspiration for me.
Did you, when you started that book, we'll get back to the formal questions in a minute, but now that I've got you on the spot, when you started that book, was it because you wanted to write the book you wanted to read?
Yes.
That's sort of my motivation.
It was, you know, I started writing at a time when Twilight had just come out, and vampires, a lot of paranormal, very sexy romance, very glamorous characters. And I thought, I want to write a book about more regular people like me and my sister and my friends. And I grew up in a small town, lived in a small town. So I wanted to write a small town romantic comedy. And I was so lucky that I didn't know that small town romantic comedy didn't exist, or that it was dead, or, you know, so I wrote the kind of book that I did want to read. And luckily, you know, it did get sold.
Isn't it really cool that when I wrote Fancy Pants, I didn't know that we weren't allowed to write about sports.
Oh yeah.
And ignorance was such a blessing because we were just kind of, you were just sort of blindly stumbled in with the small town romance, me with sports. We had no plan.
Right.
Ignorance was bliss.
Yeah. And I had no career goal either. It was just make as much as part-time bartender when you were in college. So it has been amazing and exciting. And you know, I'm so dazzled that people read my books. You know, it's still so thrilling when you get the mail and people come out to see you. And this is so strange. You know, you and I, we often go on book tour. We love that. We've been in places together, and it's wonderful. And now we're stuck at home. You know, you're stuck in a really beautiful place. But and I am too. I'm on Cape Cod. But this is great too, because we can reach so many readers, you know, this Zooming and virtual events. It's really lovely.
And we don't have to get on an airplane. I have to admit, I'm really, really loving this outreach. I miss hugging.
Yes, me too.
I love getting the hugs. I miss that, but I don't miss the plane. And I do love talking to more readers.
Right. And this way, no one has to file a restraining order against you. All the hugging.
Yeah, it does get out of hand.
I know. But I want to talk about Dance Away with Me because, you know, I've been your fan for decades. And this book, I thought, I knew I would like it, but it really blew me out of the water. I think it's the best book you've ever written. And I loved, you know, it had all of the SCP elements that I love. It had the broody, growly hero. It had that sort of larger than life career that he had as a famous artist. But you also gave us a small town. You gave us a lot of angst and yearning and this impossible relationship between Ian, the painter, and Tess, the former midwife, who is thrust into delivering a baby under very difficult circumstances. And the way it unfolded, I mean, I read it so fast, and I'm not a fast reader. and I just loved it. Then I went into like the stages of grief when I was finished. I was not prepared to let these people go. And I'm so excited that it got Publishers Weekly Book of the Week and Apple's Book of the Month, because I thought it was fantastic.
I got so many things to say about your book. But I can't say them right now because you just complimented me. But I just want you to know it's coming up, because I got a lot to say about this book.
Well, when you started writing this, did you have a plan? Like, do you plan in advance? I want to write a story of an artist and a midwife in a small town in the mountains, or are you just a blank slate?
My brain is a blank slate. And that's really a rude question, because you know me well enough now by now to know that I don't plan anything. I just stumble in. The original version of this book took place in the 1950s in rural Sicily. How about that? I mean, it just crazy. But okay.
Shout out to your editor.
Yeah, I know. A can of worms. So my favorite, this is the advanced copy. This isn't the final copy, but this, where I want to read now, my sweet spot in reading and kind of in writing too, is that line between where you're on the line with women's fiction and romance. I absolutely love reading there and writing there. And you know, we were in a position, I got your book about the same time you got mine. I did not get up when I read this book. I mean, I lost 2 days of writing.
I'm so proud.
Honestly, truly loved about this book. You know, a book where you still live with the characters after you're done? That is just I mean, Barb is kind of the pivotal character in this book, because she's an older woman. She's 70. And her views on marriage are so interesting and so complicated. You really dug deep there, girlfriend. You dug deep enough that I wondered if you made McIrish a little bit nervous.
I did. In fact, he finished it the other day. He always waits for the final copies. And he read it the other day and he said, honey, are we as happy as I think we are? And I said, yes, absolutely. You're a wonderful husband. I adore you. We don't have these problems, but I think, marriage, we all want to have a long and happy marriage. And what I wanted to write about in this book was romantic relationships. So we have Barb and John, who've been married for so many years, and they were very in love in the beginning. And then it just kind of unravels to the point where they are strangers who live in the same house.
It unravels so gradually and so realistically. Because I think in all, Mr. Bill and I are coming up on 50 years.
Oh, wow.
And in all those years, you have the roller coaster. And you kind of see it, except this time it really does go south.
Right.
And part of you as a reader, what I love about the characters of this book is you dig deep into these characters, but you don't want to kill yourself when the book is over, because the book but with these, there were times when I just really wanted to smack Barb, and then times when I'm like, I get it. I so totally get it. And the two sisters. Jessica is such a pain, and I love her.
Juliet,
the
older one. Yeah.
And with Sadie is kind of our entry character, I think, to this story. Go through her, and we've got that great love story, which I want in a book still. I still want that love story, but all this richness of characters. This is going to be on my top 5 list of my favorite books for 2020. For sure.
One of the questions that I'm seeing is, Kristen, will you go back to romantic comedy? And one of the joys of writing Always the Last to Know was Sadie's storyline, which I view very much as a romantic comedy. She is an artist. We both wrote about artists, which I think is so funny, because
all of overlapping things.
We do, and Susan and I, we don't talk about our book. We're friends, but we talk more about like kids and great places we've eaten.
And then reading each other's books, and we go, Where did that come from? It's really strange.
Right.
Yeah.
Sadie's an artist, and she has to come back to her little town of Stoningham when her dad has a stroke, and she and her dad are very close. She's her daddy's girl, and she comes back and encounters her first love, Noah. And their storyline is that their love was never in question. It was the timing, how
Logistics.
much they would compromise, the logistics. So there's a lot of feelings there, and I loved writing their story. They're definitely, I think, the funniest storyline in there. And then Juliet is, I think, someone a lot of readers will relate to, because she's that woman who has a job and is determined to do great at her job. And she's also happily married, and she wants to keep that going. And she's a devoted daughter, and she has 2 teenage girls. And she's just got all these balls in the air, and she's starting to crack a little.
She started, sure.
Yeah, yeah. And so, the last thing she needs is for her dad to be sick and her mother to have more of a burden. And she's just starting to lose it bit by bit, to the point where she's having panic attacks in her closet, and fantasizing about moving to Montana, as one does, right? But your book, Tess, is she's escaping, she's hiding, she's recovering from a great loss.
She is.
And
she's stuck. She's so stuck in her grief.
Right. And she has every reason to be. She's a widow, young widow. And it was what I loved about her story was what we learn about her marriage. You know, she loved her husband and she mourns him.
A good guy.
He was a great guy, you know, but she did a lot more emotional work in that marriage than I think she even knew, you know. And she's not prepared to meet somebody like Ian, who is as far apart from her husband as could be. And Ian is in no mood for a relationship.
All Ian wants to do is be left alone. He really, that is all he wants. But these are at bottom, they're basically, they're 2 good people, and another person is involved, and they can't really make that choice to stay in isolation. I think the question that you got about, are you going to write more romantic comedy, is an interesting one, because I get it all the time. And, you know, I write my Chicago Stars book, which tend to be romps. Some of the Wynette, Texas books are romps. And then I do these standalone books in between. And readers, readers love romantic comedy. I get it. I do too. I think in our books, even when we do a book that's more serious, that there were times I definitely laughed in your book. You still deliver those zingers. And I love the fact that our readers will go with us as we move and explore different kinds of themes. And my vow is that no matter whether I'm writing a book that's a little more serious or more of a romp, you're always going to get a happy ending. Because
Right.
That's a contract I won't break with my readers.
Same here. And I think, you know, especially these days, in all that we're dealing with in the country right now, with the pandemic and watching police brutality and looting and rioting, where, you know, there's so much chaos and so much strife and heartache and fear. We write books about people who are in strife and heartache and fear, and they get through it. They have to go right through it, right through the fire. And we always promise that they're going to get there and they will be better off for it. And I just need that message these days. You know, as a reader, I've only been reading books that deliver on that you're going to get there. It's going to be hard. You're not only going to be okay, you're going to be better than you were before.
Yeah, that is a message somebody is calling to me. Yes. You know, I'm on a Zoom meeting right now, and so this is kind of, you got me at a bad time. Yeah. Sorry. I don't even know what he asked me to do. I think he wanted me to go out in the parking lot or something.
Don't go in the parking lot with strange men, Susan. Okay.
Young and cute. This
Could
is
be a serial killer. Has reading taught you
No.
nothing?
since I've been doing these things outside. I'm on the I'm in Southern California right now. We ended up quarantining out here instead of back home, which is a very good place to quarantine. But I'm not very far from the San Diego coaster, so it'll run through, and lots of things happen. But that's the first time I've been paged from out there.
I was hoping he'd bring you a glass of wine or something.
No, I know. Oh, so where were we? I haven't been paying attention to any of the questions coming in.
Can
Oh,
I intercede with a question
thank you.
from
Yes,
Melissa
thanks, Nina.
saying, if you could be best friends with any of your characters, which would it be?
That's a tough one. I always think of the last book that came out because it's freshest in my heart. And I would say I'd love to be best friends with Barb and Caro in Always the Last to Know, because that's another thing about that book is the friendships that
Caro is a great character, and their friendship, I mean, they handle each other some zingers, but friendship is so solid.
Yeah, and I think what Barb comes to realize is that the love of your life isn't always romantic. And because they know each other so well, they go into each other's houses, grab a wine glass, order pizza, I love that about them. But I think I'd be really good friends with Sadie too, because she's up for anything. She's always ready to have a laugh. She doesn't take herself too seriously. I think she'd be a lot of fun.
I'd like to be friends with Juliet because I get her so much.
Yeah.
Plus, I mean, I love these amazingly accomplished women who I think need us. They need friends to cheer them on because sometimes they neglect that.
Yeah.
In my own book, gosh.
Well, Tess was such an amazing character.
Yeah, but I really like Heather.
Yeah.
The hippy dippy friend.
He was great. Always like doing yoga and making special tea.
My best friend, though, and the person that pretty much the character who's most like me is Diane. And I don't want to say too much about her right now.
Yeah.
Diane is, she's not one of those soft, cushy, cookie baking grandmas. She's a Chico's wearing grandma, which might be kind of like me. And I was really drawn to her. So for right now, I'm going to pick Diane, but we're going to let Tess definitely in our friendship circle because you got a medical person around, right?
I loved her because she would do the hard thing, knowing she was going to get pushback. Like she just had such a strong moral code, the issues
with moral center, doesn't she?
Yeah, and she's just rock solid in that. So I felt like I would have done some of the things she did, even knowing that this is going to come back to bite me, but this is the right thing to do. But I wanted to talk about the grandparents in this story because the story centers around the birth of this little baby Wren, and who's going to take care of her. Because her mother dies. That's not exactly a plot spoiler. It happens pretty early on. And I loved that you didn't take the easy route of making like the evil grandparents swoop in for custody. They really loved that kid. They really were going to take excellent care of her. And it made the conflict so much more gut-wrenching because they did have a right to her. They were her blood relatives, and I loved that. I mean, it's so easy to make these cardboard bad guys, or that the threat is coming from someone who clearly doesn't deserve it. And I really loved them, and which made it all the harder because you think like, I see their point. I got nothing bad to say about these people.
And I think this is an issue that's important to me because I have 2 bonus grandchildren. I have 2 biologicals and 2 bonuses, and I love them equally. Just love them with all my heart. They're all wonderful. So this is something that I can sympathize with. Mm-hmm. And the thing that I notice you're so right about the stereotypical bad guy. What I love about your characters is your characters have these edges to them, but you don't have any stereotypical bad guys running around causing trouble. These are internal things. These are internal issues that are getting in the characters' way.
Right,
And
right.
I'm not going to comment on one of the best soap villains in your book, the villain, and what happens with he, she. I won't even disclose. That one knocked me out. Loved it. It was perfect.
Thank you. Thank you. I think I know what you're talking about.
I think you do
Refer to
too.
my book.
Any more questions coming in that we should address?
Oh, sure. Patty wants to know, can you tell us a fun story of your friendship? I imagine there have been hijinks between you.
Oh,
I
loves to post these photos of herself with her hair going in 13 different directions. It's like she gets up in the morning and her first thought is, oh, I have no makeup on, my hair's a wreck. Let me do a video. So I do tend to talk with her a bit about that.
well, I posted a picture of Susan because we were doing an event together in Chicago in at Anderson's bookstore, the wonderful Anderson's. And Susan said, "Would you like to stay over at my house?" And I said, "Oh, I would love to." And then a day later, I jumped on social media and I said, "I'm having a sleepover with SEP." And I was looking through my pictures of you. The only one I found was with you with the clown nose on. So Susan said, "Thanks a lot for that picture. And I'm going to get you back." So we're at her house. She's this lovely house. She shows me to the guest room and she said, "By the way, I have a clown suit. I might be calling on you in the middle of the night." And I said, "Susan, I am so afraid of clowns. If you do that, I am going to wet your own bed here." And all night long, every little creak in the house, every time the wind blew, I'm looking around,
Getting the clowns.
staring at the door.
And when are you coming back to stay with me? She asked evilly.
Oh dear.
I
But
think
yes.
we're all like, clown, no clown, we're there. Margaret wants to know, how do you develop your characters? Do you do detailed pre-work or do you evolve as you write?
That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
My background is in theater, so I do everything internally. And when I start, I've got these little shell characters. They have no depth, no personality, and I'm kind of moving them around. And I've noticed that it takes me almost every book to the 9-month mark before those characters start becoming flesh and blood in my mind, and where I can transfer it to paper. I just think that 9 months thing is hysterical. What about you, Crystal? Do you do outlines and character sketches and all that ahead of time?
I do. I call it procrastination. It never helps, but I'm not able to jump from one book into another. So I fool around with ideas, but I generally pick the situation that I want to write about. What if you were called back to your hometown to take care of your dad unexpectedly? Or what if you were just about to ask for a divorce and your husband had a stroke? So I make a situation and then the characters kind of grow from that. It takes me about 200 pages to get to know them. Before that, same. They're just sort of shell characters, situational characters. And I just need to spend that time with them, with my fingers on the keyboard, putting them through their paces before they really start to take on life, when the soul is breathed into them. It just takes
Is one of your characters more difficult in Always the Last to Know than another? Did it take longer for one of them to develop than another?
Yeah, it was Barb. She is.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah,
she complicated character.
She is, and she comes across, I think, to her two daughters. Her daughters are 12 years apart in age. She's a very different mother to both of them. She does her best with both of them, but one of them just adores her, and everything she does as a mother works from conception on. And the other, everything is rebuffed or rejected. And so you see her from her own, she gets her own point of view, but also how her daughters view her. And at first she was just kind of a bitch. She was just sort of hard and cold and too matter of fact. And I do think as the book goes on, you really start to understand her and have compassion for her situation and start to relate to her when she talks about her marriage and her efforts. And the joy of motherhood after a long bout of infertility. So it took a while to get her to that point where I knew who she was and why she acted that way. The trick is to make sure the reader likes her enough to keep reading. And was that true for you, Susan? Did you have Tess or Ian giving you pushback? Was Ian too grumpy, too cold at first?
Well, first I want to talk about Barb because I think you do kind of dislike her in the beginning. But what happens is because you do, it's creating this wonderful conflict that makes you keep turning the pages to see how that's going to develop. With Tess and Ian, the secondary characters in this book just really were easy for me. They sprang pretty much full force into being. But with Tess and Ian, just trying to figure out their issues and what was really behind everything, what was behind the most obvious conflict. Mm-hmm. That one took a long time. And Ian's relationship with Bianca is complicated. And Bianca was a kind of complicated character too.
I loved her.
Ren's birth mother. Mm-hmm. So those two, it took a lot longer with both of them. And mm-hmm. seeing how Tessa's grief, how she was going to burst through that and not making her just this limp blanket. She's kind of a blubbering mess, but she still is out there. She's still trying to advance in her own way.
Right.
So there were challenges.
Yeah. I loved the cafe.
Wasn't that funny? Wouldn't you like to work there for a little bit?
Oh my gosh, yes, and eat all the donuts.
There were a lot of donuts in this book.
Yeah, that's just another selling point. But Tess goes to work, and as you said, the secondary characters we mostly meet through the cafe. Her boss was hysterical.
Fish.
Yeah, he was wonderful. Her coworkers, you love to hate them. The people who came in, the Instagram girl, always trying to take a photo of herself and be Insta famous. I love when she says, like, I have almost 100 followers,
Poor delusional girl, right?
Right. But they were so real and so, fully fleshed. But yeah, I mean, when you start with a character who's stuck in her issues, it can't get out of her own way. I think it takes a lot of talent to make her relatable and not sort of limp and pathetic.
Right.
You want
don't want her to be a victim,
right?
And you do that really well in your books too. Your characters have challenges, but they're not going to be victims. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what I know. That's what I'm looking for when I read. I want to see women rising above the circumstances that they have been forced into.
So Christine asks, what amazes me with both of your works is the dialogue between characters. The dialogue is so authentic. How do you both create such realistic dialogue between various characters with the tone, language, emotions? Where do you get your inspiration?
Well,
you can answer that, Kristen.
I mean, I that's my favorite part of writing, whether the characters are having a fight or snarky exchanges or professing their love for each other. I absolutely love writing dialogue. And that I think is probably one of the easiest things for me as an author is to write that. I think that as chatty as I am, I'm actually more of a listener, especially in groups. And I love to listen to people. I come from a big extended family of all ages and ethnicities and everything. And I have a very wide circle of friends, and I really love listening to people and asking their stories and just kind of sitting back and taking notes.
I think dialogue is probably my strength. and it is, I don't know whether it's the theater background or whatever, but I do every once in a while. I love that when you get in that state where you're working and all of a sudden it feels like the characters are actually dictating to you, and you might be writing it down and you're going, did you really say that? That's just such a fun state to be in. And I think every writer has different strengths, but being able to write dialogue is just, that is my happy place.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have that theater background. I don't, but I'm that person who thinks of what to say 4 hours later as I'm driving home from the party, but that's the joy of writing too, is that you can go back and shorten it and sass it up and fix it. So I have to show you something, readers. I'm giving away a, that's my husband. I'm not giving him away. I'm giving away, I don't know if you can see this. It's a copper outdoor wine mug with a lid on it so the mosquitoes don't land in it. Or you can have my husband. I pulled up your picture by mistake, honey. You're not for auction. I'm sorry, I'm keeping you.
So anyway, doing that on purpose. I should have known.
He's right here. He just came in from the beach. So you can get a copper wine glass, but I'll work on finding you a husband if I inadvertently made a promise I have to keep here.
Oh gosh. And all I'm offering are autographed book plates.
Oh, we can do that too. We can do that too.
For sure.
Oh.
Well, Lori says she's got dibs on McIrish, so we better watch out.
You have to stand in line, Lori. You're standing in line for that.
I took him out to lunch today. He's been such a good sport. When we have a book release, there's so much activity, even, here, when we're not traveling, when we don't have to worry about packing and stuff, but we do a bunch of interviews and phone calls, radios, podcasts, and we've got our little pile of cheat sheets and that kind of thing. And he's been great. And we're in close quarters too, which is true of you and Mr. Bill too, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Trapped in paradise.
So the link for the wine glass is in the chat. So you can go to that link and put your name in, I guess. And there is no place to get McIrish, so you're all out of luck.
I'm going to watch myself very carefully in the next few months, check my baselines.
Funny.
I'm looking for my dog keeps circling.
We have a question from Facebook saying, will you ever publish more than one book a year? I think that's for you, Kristen, right?
Well,
I'm hopeless.
I did for a while when I was writing the Blue Heron series. It's very hard for me, like Susan, it's very hard for me to write this kind of a book quickly. It takes a lot of thought, it takes a lot of revision. And I would rather write one book a year and write one great book a year than write two pretty good books a year. And I also, as Susan alluded to this too, we don't necessarily want to write the same kind of books over and over, as as much pleasure as they bring to people. I find the last thing I want to do is imitate my previous work. So it does take a little while. Here comes my dog. Come on, buddy. They're waiting for you.
I do have to ask this. Oh,
Spot,
oh.
jump up so everybody can see hi. Oh, I'm sorry. Spot doesn't want to say hi.
Well, Mr. Phil.
I have a question from Sonali, Dave.
Hey, Sonali. Hi.
She's going to make you do the Sophie's Choice, which one?
Just happen to have it right here.
Which of your books is your favorite?
Oh, Sonali.
We're going to get even with Sonali's our friend. This is the wonderful Sonali Dev. And we are going to get so even with you by asking you that stupid question, which stupid question.
It's a horrible question. I refuse to answer. No, my favorite is always the one that just came out. It's like a newborn baby. It's perfect. It hasn't given me any sass yet. It's the freshest in my mind. So I love that one. I also remember the books that were easier to write.
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to the ones I bled over. So what about you, Susan?
I always say that the book I've just written is my favorite, and whatever I'm working on is my least favorite.
Exactly. I know you go through that, what am I doing?
What am I doing?
I'm done. I'm over. I've been
Yes.
faking it all along and now they'll know.
Yes,
Um,
that's right.
but yeah, I am actually reading Recipe for Persuasion, Sonali. And look, I have it right here because it's on my coffee table. And that's Sonali's nod to Jane Austen's Persuasion. And I love it so much. Oh my gosh, I'm blurbed on the cover. There we go. Sonali Dev is unparalleled in the world of romantic fiction. And I absolutely stand by that. It's such a fun book. It's got a Food Network show where they bring in untalented celebrities who are very good looking to cook with these chefs, and it involves a first love, and the food porn that Sonali writes.
Sonali puts some pretty good food porn up on her Instagram page too. It's Sonali Dev.
Yeah, yeah. And Susan and I have had the pleasure of eating at her house, which is,
Isn't that a great meal?
oh my gosh, yeah. If I should move in with Sonali when I'm reading her books so she can cook for me. I think that's only fair.
Here, well, I'll move in the other room.
Okay.
Or since Sonali and I live close to each other, she can just come over to the house and cook for us every day.
Perfect. Aren't you glad you tuned in, Sonali?
Oh, so Karen asks, do your family and friends see themselves in your characters or scenes? Do you borrow from your own life?
Yes.
Phil does not even see himself in things where I've actually adopted his habits. He is totally clueless, and we're not going to tell him any differently.
It's so funny that I have done that. I have borrowed friends and family members, and some inevitably that person will say, which character I really hated? I hated that mother, and it's based on her, and it's just they never get it. But I think that every one of my heroes has a little bit of my honey bun in them, because whether it's He Remembers How You Take Your Coffee, which is essentially how McIrish won my heart on our second date. He remembered how I took my coffee.
You are easy, girlfriend.
We had known each other for 6 weeks before we were engaged. So you are correct. I was easy.
Right, it's right.
That's right. What were we talking about again? We were talking about food a minute ago. Do people see themselves in my books? No, never. But I do use them shamelessly. Yeah.
A bit here and there.
I think what happens is often I'll say, like, I'm gonna, that lieutenant's wife, she's such a hoot and a holler, I'm gonna put her in a book. But as I write her, she becomes her own character. So she might have been based off.
Entry point to the
Yeah, exactly, an entry point. And but by the end of the book, they're something new. That's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
So Ellen would like to know, do you prefer writing standalones or within series? Actually, a couple people have asked that question.
Oh, that's a good question. I think the series books are a little more difficult to write because the standalone books, you're going into a familiar world. But I've always said with the Chicago Stars books and the Wynette, Texas books, I won't write any books in that series if I don't have a great idea. I love both those series and I want to honor them. And I'm not going to write a Stars book just because it really would be good for my career to write a Stars book. It has to be a great idea. But the standalones are a little tougher to write for me.
Yeah. I mean, I've only written the one series, although what I love to do is connect books. So Always the Last to Know is set in the same town as Life and Other Inconveniences. So I know the setting.
Bring in, yeah.
Yeah, I know the setting. I know the layout of the town, and I definitely feel that my setting is a character too. So if I know that place, I have the tone of the town, what it's like to live there. I know where things are. I have secondary characters that you can run into. But Yeah, starting from scratch is definitely hard, but it's also exhilarating because you've never done this before. You've never tried this kind of thing before. You don't know anybody. It tends to take a little longer, I think.
I think it does too.
So have you ever written a character that is similar to your own characteristics?
Well, I just said that with Diane in this book. There are similarities between me and her, but that hardly ever happens. And a couple of books I've written characters who were not admirable, and I have used parts of my own personality for that.
I've done that too, Susan. Don't feel bad. I think that's sort of like in this book, Juliet with her, her schedule, her lists, and everything will be done well, damn it, even if it's killing me, that's definitely me. But I think, we write these characters, we make them up, they come from our hearts. So there's always going to be parts of us in there, whether or not we have the same jobs or backgrounds or goals. I think, there's got to be some similarity. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to write them.
I would agree with that. And when I wrote Lady Be Good, the heroine in that book, who's the headmistress of girls' school, she loves to lead. She loves to take charge. Boy, is that me. Even if I have no idea where I'm going, I will take leadership.
Follow Susan. She's got the flag.
I got the flag. I was on a cruise and they let me hold the paddle one time. I was just like in my element. I need to post that picture again. But yeah, I just
was surprised.
I don't know where I'm
going. So somebody wants to know, do you either of you have a tradition when you finish writing or editing a book, when you send it in?
Other than like a victory cry where I say, I did it, and my family jumps, and that's about it. We don't, I tend not to really mark those milestones. Maybe I should, but there's always like a deep satisfaction of sending the book in, and I then just collapsing on a couch count. I'm really good at that.
When I send a book in, I don't do any kind of celebration because there's that satisfaction of hitting the button, the relief, and then the fear of like, oh, what is my editor going to say? What are people going to say when they actually read this? So I don't know that that is a totally joyous occasion for me, not nearly as good as actually getting the final book in your hand.
Yeah. Yeah. And the first thing you do if you're an author is you smell it.
Oh, the book. Yeah.
Us librarians do that too.
I think a lot of people do. A lot of book lovers do.
So let's see. Susan and Kristen, what are your favorite books of each other?
Dance Away with Me, as I said, I'm a big SEP fan, but this one was it just hit every note, and to mix metaphors, it hit it out of the park. It was just an extraordinary book. I loved Heroes Are My Weakness too. I loved that book. It was set on the Cranberry Islands in Maine, where I've been, and I loved the winter. And again, like Susan can redeem a hero like no other author writing today. She takes a guy that you almost hate, he's a bully and he's a jerk and he's scary, and then he becomes like a puppy dog, this magnificent brooding puppy dog with a heart of gold. And I love books where she does that. So Dance Away with Me definitely has that guy.
My top two favorites of yours, and I've read a lot of them and I love them all, is Always the Last to Know and Good Luck with That.
Thank you.
That. I love where you went with that book. That was a real, and if you only knew, that was one of the funniest books I ever read.
Thank you.
Those are all big favorites of mine.
Thank you. Anything else, Mina?
We have plenty of questions. What other books are you reading or want to read? And I wanted to remind you, and I forgot to say this in my introduction, is that today's a book birthday also for Farah Roshan and Nalini Singh.
Oh, yes. I actually read Farah's The Boyfriend Project. And again, like Farah's always been a good writer, a great writer. She delivers on that happy ending and character arc really well. But this book, The Boyfriend Project, I thought it was like modern day Jane Austen because it takes societal issues and for example, so we have a viral video moment as sort of the opening of the book. And so we have characters thrust into the spotlight where they're not comfortable. Three women making friends after finding out that they've been dating the same guy. And a hero with a different motivation than is immediately obvious. I loved that book. So I highly recommend Farah Roshan's Boyfriend Project. And as I think I've mentioned, I'm still reading Recipe for Persuasion because this is the kind of book you don't want to end. So I'm trying to read it slowly. And Sonali's prose is so beautiful that you don't want to race through it. You want to savor it. So I'm really enjoying this one. I read Real Men Knit, which was a recent release, which is about 4 hot brothers in Harlem who were all adopted by this lady, Mama Joy. Mama Joy dies and they inherit her knitting store, which was just the best premise and a really delightful book. How about you, Susan? What have you read lately?
Just finished not too long ago, Jane Ann Krentz's new one, Close Up. I love Jane's suspense because it doesn't take me into really, really gory places, but it's still fun to try to figure it out. And I didn't figure it out, but
I don't know. I admire her so much for being able to write those plots.
She's great. And Susan Mallory's always good. I have the new Robin Carr, which I can't wait to read.
Yeah.
And there's somebody else I wanted to mention. Oh my gosh, just went right through my head. You know what? I finally got around to reading Ann Patchett's Commonwealth, which I really enjoyed. I was surprised that I did.
I read The Dutch House, or I should say I listened to The Dutch House. It was narrated by Tom Hanks. So it was really lovely to listen to. That was quite a ride too, a kind of a long, decades-long story, filled with heartache and beauty. It was lovely.
Audible. I remember when audiobooks first came in and they weren't very popular and they weren't going anywhere. And I remember thinking right at the beginning, this is really something. And now the audiobooks they just become better and better and find a bigger audience all the time. And I just think that's a fabulous thing. So it's really cool.
Yeah.
So I have to say this. What's her name? Said. My librarian heart, Stacy, my librarian heart is so happy to see you're using a bookmark, Kristen.
Of course.
Just wanted to not take away your writing credentials.
I'm not a savage, right? I don't fold down the corners, for the love of God.
Oh, I can mutilate a book. I can write notes in the margin and underline and turn corners down. You're either a book mutilator or you're not.
Yeah.
I had such interesting posts on my Facebook page about that. People talking about how they treat their books, whether they treat them as holy objects or whether they just really get in there and they're really, really using them. And new schools of thought. I'm not proud.
If my book is signed, it's a holy object. I have often cracked the spine of a paperback so I can, whereas my librarian best friend reads like this.
This is a really interesting question. I'm really struggling to write these days with all the chaos out in the world. How are you able to keep the words flowing?
Butt in chair.
You have to show up.
You just show up because there's always going to be something going on. And granted, the something lately has been really, really horrendous. But here comes the train. I'm going to go on mute for a second. Would you take it for Kristen?
Sure. I absolutely agree with Susan. We are professional writers. this is our job. We have a contract and a deadline and other people waiting for our book to be delivered on time. So you have to show up. You have to show up. You have to turn off Twitter. You have to turn off the news and spend some time writing your words. Even if those words get deleted the next day, you have to keep trying and moving forward. And I also think you have to give yourself time off in times like this to rest and recover and try to find some peace, whether it's like a walk in the woods or taking a yoga class virtually or snuggling with your dog, right, Luther? You know, that you have to feed the good parts of your soul and your brain as well as paying attention to what's happening in the world.
Yeah, it's you know, people ask, do you have to, people ask me, and I try not to laugh when they say it, do you have to be inspired to write? I always think if I had to be inspired to write, I'd probably write 1 hour a month. But I just like to show up and to work. You can fix, my favorite saying is, you can fix a bad page, but you can't fix a blank one.
Right, right. Yeah.
This is a funny.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, you know, I had a horse when I was a kid, and one of my chores, of course, was to muck out her stall. And it's always stayed with me that I view writing as like mucking out a stall, and you're looking for the earring that you dropped, you know, and you have to shovel all that manure to get to that jewel that you're going to find. So don't be afraid of writing badly. If you're an author, just keep writing.
Yeah.
Just keep moving forward.
Right.
Keep shoveling the manure.
I like this question. Jessica asked, how do your husbands handle your fame?
Fame. Susan, are you recognized in public?
Oh, when I am, and it's happened twice at Costco, it like makes my week. It makes me so happy. I don't know what there is about Costco, but my readers are hanging out there. So that's about it. But you know, I think, I'm sure it's the same with McIrish. They're so used to it, they don't kind of think that much about it. I mean, they think it's cool, but you know, my husband really kind of wants to know, well, what do you have planned for dinner tonight?
Well, I will say that McIrish absolutely loves, you know, he's so proud of me, and he's such a supportive husband. And, you know, I love posting about him because he's such a great guy. And now, like, if we go to a writer's conference or a book signing, people will shove me out of the way and hand me their phone and say, "We take a picture of your husband and me," you know, and he really enjoys that. You know, he enjoys seeing people excited to see me, and he enjoys people recognizing him. There was I think we were in Michael's or Staples, you know, another glamorous store like Costco, and someone said, "I'm sorry, are you Kristen Higgins?" Oh, we were at Petco, remember, honey? And and of course I hadn't showered for 2 days, and my hair was, you know, like in the pictures, and I had just had like a garlicky pizza. And she said, "Are you Kristen Higgins?" And then she saw my husband. She's like, "Oh my God, McIrish is here too!" And her voice changed and everything. So he enjoys that sort of reflected fame and the adoration, you know, from my readers. And
Bill loves it when he's asked for autographs.
yeah.
So happy. And he's also, his best skill is at book signings. He has gotten so good at taking photos with any kind of cell phone you hand him. He's got that all worked out. So yeah, he really gets a kick out of that.
We have a question from Facebook. Is there any place that you want to go research to use as a setting for a future book?
Yes, I want to go to Hawaii because I've had the luck and good fortune to be able to go a couple years ago with our kids, and I just loved it so much. I would love to set a book there, just because it would require me to live there for a little while. But I don't know if I will ever pull that off, you know.
I like writing about the Midwest, and I like writing about the South. Those are areas I'm very attracted to writing about. And I travel a lot. I do hiking trips all over the world. but I've only really twice been inspired when I'm traveling to write. Generally, when I'm writing or when I'm traveling, it just is kind of a refueling time for me. So right now, the next destination, I'm so looking forward to being able to travel again because I want to go to the Faroe Islands, but I don't
Oh,
have to be setting a book there. Those pictures there are amazing.
yeah, I think that to set a book in a place where you're really a stranger, it means that your character has to be a stranger too. You
Yep.
know, I couldn't set a book in Alabama writing from an Alabama's a woman's perspective because I don't know what it's like to live in the South. You know, I've visited, but I've never lived there. So I think to capture the sensibility, um, that's that's why I stick with the Northeast. You know, this is where I live. This is what I know, and it's a beautiful part of the country. So why not? You know.
I am very comfortable about writing about the South because I had a past life where I lived there. I swear, it feels very comfortable to me.
Yeah.
But when it comes to writing in other countries, I know when I was writing Breathing Room, which was set in Tuscany, the heroine again she was an American going in there so that I was writing from her
Right.
perspective.
Right.
Because it gets tough. And there's some cultures and some areas that I would not feel comfortable writing in because I don't think I could do them justice.
But yeah, I feel the same way.
Mhm.
Want to make an appearance?
No.
They're asking to see the husbands. Is Mr. Bill around? Will he say hi?
I see his music rack.
You remember Susan.
Give
Hi,
you
Susan.
away.
I almost gave you away.
I
I'm
know, I
sorry.
heard. The highest bidder.
No, I can't see him.
Oh, last time he was vacuuming in the background. Just,
Oh.
Oh, that's
Fine.
right.
Up my game.
It's very, very, very sexy. Yes.
Well, that is his music stand. He's been working on the Bach cello suites. And so I know that he's around somewhere, but I don't know.
Mary wants to know, Kristen, if you were surprised by some of the reactions with Good Luck with That. And I actually think you could expand on that. And I'd like to ask Susan too, has there ever been a book where you've gotten pushback?
You know, with Good Luck with That, I would say that 98% of the feedback that I got was so positive. I've never had more fan mail about a book. This is a book about women and size and self-esteem and their physical selves and how you get from all the messaging that is given to us about being a certain way, looking a certain way, you know, being curvy in the right places and flat in the right places and, you know, thin, whatever. It's just so much pressure on us. And I know in my life, it has been so hard to be happy with the skin I'm in, you know, and not say, you know, I gotta lose weight for that, or, you know, I wish I had a smaller waist, or, you know, whatever it was. And I wanted to write a book that really honestly tackled the journey to get to self-acceptance, whatever size you are. And I think what bothered people was that I wrote from the perspective of a woman who was medically called super morbidly obese, which meant she had a body mass index of over 50, and she, you know, she weighed well over 600 pounds, and her problem was food addiction. And I really wanted to explore that because I think everybody has a story, and I think that it's very easy. They say like fat is the last accepted discrimination. It's very easy to look at someone of that size and say like, how did you let yourself get that way? And I wanted to answer that question of this is how. It's often sexual abuse. It's often depression, for not just you, but for your parents. And so in writing Emerson's point of view and writing the struggle of Georgia and Marley to get past all that pressure to be a certain way, I think I hit a nerve, you know, and for most people, as I said, like 98% of the feedback I got was really, really validating and uplifting, saying, thank you for writing this book. I feel seen. I feel like you were in my head, and I feel better about myself now. And I'm going to drop the dieting and drop the yo-yoing and just try to like me for all the great things that I am. So that was my goal in writing it. And yeah, there was a little pushback. It was usually from people who had not read the book. So
I think
how about you?
I have never written a book where I haven't gotten pushback on something. And most of it has been completely unexpected. My sense is if you don't want to get any, if you're a writer and you don't want any pushback, then you had better write the most pablum vanilla book there is.
Right. It has to be
And
really boring.
I'm not interested in that. I know what is in my heart. I have seen writers actually had their character attacked when they've written about something that has hit a nerve with readers. But I think you have to go, the majority of readers are smart and they know what the author's trying to do. Right. You just can get attacked for so many crazy things.
You know, just to share, I once got a really funny fan letter from a woman who said, I had a character whose father was a very cold, calculating person, and he had a pet snake, a ball python. And she wrote to me, I can't believe you put a snake in this book. I will never read your books again. Don't you know that I'm afraid of snakes?
Yeah. Well, I got that with
I did not know that.
No, I got that with Heroes of My Weakness. How can you write about puppets? They're creepy. Our Sesame Street, our Elmo. I mean,
how
Bert,
dare you?
Creep. So,
Ernie, Bert and Ernie.
No, these were not scary puppets. This
right.
was Bert and Ernie.
Right.
So there's always going to be something.
Yeah, there are. I've had some really funny books. Like one of this lovely older man wrote to me and said, like, I picked up your book thinking it was about baseball and was disappointed to find out that it wasn't. However, I read it and I found myself enjoying it very much, and I just bought another one of your books. You know, it's really cute. So you never know. You never know what's going to irritate a reader. You're right. You know, if you're not going to really deeply explore the issues and the personalities, why bother?
It's pattern. You have to, as a writer, you have to find your true north and stick to it and cut out the noise, because there's always going to be somebody who doesn't like what you write. Put on your big girl panties as a writer and you just get over it.
Yeah.
Is there any book you've written that you would write differently if you were writing it today?
Yeah, would you? Do you have one?
Well, I started writing with the early historical romances. And when we had these over the top alpha heroes, and part of that was an outgrowth of the women's movement, because if you had these tough heroes, you know, I didn't do the billionaire and the girl in the typing pool, but that kind of a relationship. If you had these really tough heroes and you had these mousy little women and they jarred and she won in the end, it was very, very empowering to read. I don't think it was accidental that those books were from the historical romances of the late 70s into the 80s were gaining in popularity right along with the women's movement. I think they were very, very close friends. It was all about it. But now that would not be something I write.
Right. Yeah, I can't say that, you know, that I would handle a book differently. There are certain things, like language changes so quickly, and you know, you might use a term that was not as imbued with meaning, or maybe insult. I know I've used the word retarded, not as in description to a person, but as meaning like slowed. And then that was 10 years ago, 12 years ago. And now I wouldn't choose that word, you know, because the word has taken on a new connotation. I'm not talking about intellectually disabled in that context, but the word is fraught, you know.
What's next for you both? What's your next book?
Gosh, this is always the hardest question.
Hey, it came from your publisher. I feel like I have to ask.
Shame
I'm
on
not
you.
telling. Once everything has passed with the Dance Away with Me and people had a chance to read it, then I'll talk about my next book, but not now.
I
like to
like
be
your
curious.
answer very much. My book is going to be out next summer. It is currently called Untitled. And we'll get.
Ah, we've done it again. That's the title of
Oh
mine.
my God. Can you even imagine?
Wow, we're psychically linked.
It's crazy. Something in the air. So yeah, I think that's good advice. But yeah, it's another women's fiction and also a love story. So that's all I'm gonna say.
Well, I'm going to end with one question before I ask you to read a little bit from your books, and it's how did you meet? It's got to be a story.
How did Kristen and I meet?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I remember the first time I saw you, Susan.
Was I fabulous?
You were, and we had meaningful eye contact. So we were at an RWA conference, my very first, and I was with a fellow author, and you can tie me down and torture me. I will not tell you who she was, but she was talking about how fabulous she was and how she was the next Nora, and Watch Out World. She was amazing, and she was, currently I think it was unpublished, or she'd had one book out with a small press, but she was so confident, and she was talking about how great she was. And I looked up, and across the buffet on the other side was Susan Elizabeth Phillips, the Susan Elizabeth Phillips. And she was, putting some eggs on her plate, and she just raised her eyes to me like, oh, you poor thing. I was telegraphing, help me, help me.
My first memory of you, remember when you had the shoes that were like taxi cabs?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, you had fabulous, fabulous shoes. And I really wasn't that drawn to your personality, but loved those shoes. We became close through Robin Carr.
Yes.
Both of us have a good friendship with Robin. And Kristen and Robin are very close, and Robin and I have been friends for years. And she sort of hooked us up. We started meeting through Robin, and that's when we formed our friendship. And I said, I really like this lady. I like her even more than her shoes.
Well, I'm so honored because those are really good shoes. So thank you, Susan.
So yeah, do you guys want to take a few minutes to read from a little snippet from your books? And we're getting a reminder to make sure to enter for the wine glass when enter that that contest. And hey, we'll look forward to those bookmarks, Susan.
Okay.
You go first, Susan.
All righty. I'm just going to read a teeny bit from chapter 1. Tess danced in the rain. She danced in her underpants and an old tank top with her feet tucked into a sad pair of once silver ballet flats. She stomped her feet on the slippery moss-covered flagstones under the dripping hickory tree that had sheltered the mountain cabin for so many years. Today, she danced to hip hop. Yesterday, it was reggae. The day before that, maybe grunge, maybe not, as long as it was loud enough to be an accomplice to her anger, to sanctify the grief that would never, ever go away. The kind of loud that wasn't possible in Milwaukee, but here on Runaway Mountain, where her nearest neighbors were deer and raccoons, she could blast her music as loud as she needed. The cold, wet wind of an East Tennessee February carried the scent of decaying leaves and skunk. This wasn't the right weather to be outside in only a tank top and underpants. But unlike a dead husband, being wet and cold was something Tess could fix. A broken flagstone caught the toe of her ballet flat, sending it flopping into the weeds. One shoe on, one shoe off, sending all her emotions into her feet. A sharp stone dug at her heel, but if she stopped, her anger would burn her up. She forced her hips to move, tossed her head so that her wet, tangled hair flew. Faster and faster. Don't stop. Don't ever stop. Once you stop.
Well done, Susan. Oh, I loved that book. I'm going to read it again when I go home. Okay, I'm going to read a bit from a scene where Noah, Sadie's first love, has come over to check on her rickety little house that she bought against all practical advice.
I love that house.
Thank you. So Noah comes in. He was sent by her mother to check on her furnace. Sadie says, "What do you think?" "Money pit." "That's what Jules said. I'm glad you let your hair grow again, by the way." "No, Sadie. No, don't say that. Too late. You did." "I saw your picture on Facebook. That's all. Nothing big. I wasn't stalking you." "It was when you were engaged. That's all. All of our classmates were talking about it." He just looked at me with those dark, dark eyes, as opposed to looking at me with his teeth, for example. God, I needed a drink. "You have a boyfriend," said some distant part of my brain. "He's very nice to you." "I don't like the sound of that furnace," Noah said. "Okay if I go downstairs?" "Yeah, sure. It's super dark, though, because there's no light down there, which is what happens in the absence of light. Darkness." "Are you drunk?" he asked. "I wish. I'm just feeding off all that brooding masculinity of yours." I snorted and regretted it deeply. Noah sighed and took a flashlight out of his toolbox. I took a few cleansing breaths. It would just take some getting used to seeing Noah again. He was my first love. Of course I still had a soft spot for him. There would always be a place in my heart for... "Sadie, can you come down here and hold the flashlight, please?" "Coming." I groped my way down the stairs. I definitely needed to buy some light bulbs. Noah was at the hulking black thing, the furnace, I assumed, doing something with his hands, something manly and hard and dirty. He handed me the flashlight, which I pointed in his eyes. "Sorry," I said, shining it at the floor. "Your filter is filthy." "So are my..." "Never mind. Filter, filthy, got it. Should I call someone or buy something?" "You have someone." Oh, my heart. "I'll be right back," he said. He was already up the stairs. I heard my front door bang close. I had to get a grip. Yes, he was gorgeous. What did I expect? That he'd become Nick Nolte in my absence? And yes, that brooding Jon Snow thing was doing things to my lady parts. But he had a baby, and I had a serious long-term, almost engagement going on, and Noah didn't even want to be friends. I could respect that.
Great scene. Great.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, that's so wonderful. Both of your books are amazing. I was lucky enough to read arcs of them. Thank you so much. We have many, many comments about how you've taken people away from their troubles and give them a good laugh. And seeing two of their favorite authors together on one screen has been a really wonderful way to spend the evening.
Well, it was wonderful for us too. Thank you, Mina, and thank you, Cary Library.
No,
Oh,
thank you.
Thank you. This has
Thanks
been a thrill for me.
And thanks to everybody who tuned in. It was so nice of you to give us your time. We appreciate it.
That's right. So good night, everybody. Thank you for coming. I will send you a link to the video so you can just relive it over and over and over again.
Thanks,
Thanks, everybody.
Oh, do you guys want to stay for